Many people believe they fail because they're unlucky, because the world is against them, or because it simply wasn't meant to be. But the truth is, failure doesn't start with results. It begins in the morning, in the first thoughts you allow when you wake up, in the way you choose to start your day. Because every morning, whether you realize it or not, you're shaping your future. And if your morning is filled with chaos, distraction, doubt, or disorder, you're repeating the same pattern that leads to the same mistakes again and again. I, Brian Tracy, learned that success is not a random event. It's a direct result of what you do and don't do at the beginning of your day. If you're tired of falling short, you don't need a miracle opportunity. You need to train your morning. Because when you take control of your first decisions, you take control of your direction. And when you take control of your direction, success stops being a dream and becomes a daily strategy. Failure doesn't shout. It doesn't crash in all at once. It doesn't show up with a warning label that says, "This is holding you back." No, failure sneaks into the small things. It hides in the first few minutes of the day. In the choice to hit snooze and sleep 5 more minutes. In the habit of checking messages before reviewing your goals. In the silent thought that says, "Today won't be any different." That's where it begins, in the invisible battle most people lose before even getting out of bed. What determines whether you'll have a focused, productive, and intentional day isn't what you do at 3 p.m. It's what happens in the first 30 minutes after you open your eyes. If you begin your day reacting, feeling lost, or avoiding effort, you're entering life at a disadvantage. Because the world doesn't wait for you to focus. The world rewards the one who's already in motion, while others are still waking up. Here's the truth. Most people avoid. Success is not built on big occasional choices. It's built on tiny decisions repeated every single day. How you rise, how you speak to yourself, what thoughts you allow, and how you prioritize your goals. Those things either build you or break you. It's not about waking up at 5 a.m. because it's trendy, or copying someone else's routine from the internet. It's about having clarity about who you are, what you want, and what you're willing to do to get there. That clarity only activates when you guide your mind in the morning, not when you let it drift. You can't expect new results if every morning begins with improvisation, with noise, with no structure, no purpose. Your day is not shaped by the clock. It's shaped by your intention. The morning is your training ground, the place where you decide if today will be just another day or the first day of a new life. Every time you open your eyes and let impulse take over, the urge to sleep more, to avoid discomfort, to focus on what you lack, you strengthen an identity that keeps you stuck where you don't want to be. But when you decide that your morning is sacred, that your first hour is untouchable, that this moment belongs to you, not to the world, something changes. You feel it, others see it, and that change begins to build. A great morning doesn't guarantee a great day, but it prepares you to face it with more strength, more clarity, and more intention. And when that's repeated daily, it transforms. Life doesn't change when some massive opportunity shows up. It changes when you stop wasting the small ones, especially the one you get each morning. Every morning that begins in a rush, in chaos, or in distraction pulls you further away from your best self, but you don't notice it. Because morning failure doesn't come with immediate consequences. There's no alarm that sounds when you put off what matters. There's no punishment when you fall into autopilot. There's only a quiet discouragement, a lack of energy, a feeling that you're chasing something you never reach. Over time, that feeling becomes your identity. You start telling yourself, "I'm not consistent. I'm always missing something. I'm just not like others." But what you're missing isn't motivation. It's structure. It's focus. It's a solid decision to stop giving your mornings to disorder. Because when you don't lead your beginning, the rest of your day pulls you in every direction. You don't fail because of what you do in major moments. You fail because of what you don't do when no one is watching. For not getting up when you said you would. For not writing down what you want. For not visualizing the person you want to become. For not training your mind, and instead feeding complaints. Each morning is a blank page. You can fill it with habits that build you up, or habits that wear you down. And the danger isn't having one disorganized morning. It's having one every day, and believing it's normal. Because what you repeat without awareness becomes your destiny. And if every sunrise feels just as weak, just as scattered, just as dull. How can you expect your life to be strong, clear, and grounded if you don't design your mornings as if you were designing your future? Because in reality, that's exactly what you're doing. What you do in that first hour after waking sends a direct message to your brain. You're either here to take charge of the day or to simply survive it. And your brain responds accordingly. If you begin with order, intention, and direction, everything else starts to align. Your emotions become more stable. Your decisions grow firmer. Your motivation no longer depends on external triggers. It begins to flow from your identity. But if you start by reacting to messages, to social media, to thoughts of scarcity, then chaos takes hold of your mind before you've even made a conscious choice. And just like that, another day slips through your fingers. Do this. Get up without negotiating with laziness. Drink water as your first act of respect toward your body. Sit in silence, even for just 5 minutes, and ask yourself, what do I need today to feel proud of myself by the time the day ends? Not what the world needs, not your job, not your surroundings. You. Then write down 3 things. 1 action that moves you closer to your goal, 1 attitude you want to maintain, and 1 thought you won't allow today. That is structure. That is direction. And it takes less than 15 minutes, but those minutes are worth more than an entire day without awareness. Because it's not about doing more. It's about doing what truly matters at the start, where everything begins, where it's decided whether your day will be just another repeat or a quiet declaration that this time things are really changing. Many people think they fail because they're unlucky, because they lack time, or because they haven't found the right moment. But the truth is far simpler and much harsher. They fail because they haven't learned to be consistent once the excitement fades. Anyone can feel a burst of motivation on a Monday, but very few know how to stay the course on Thursday when the body feels heavy, when the mind starts to doubt, when the noise of the world demands immediate attention. That's where the difference is made. Not in how strong your beginnings are, but in how steady your continuation is. It doesn't matter how many times you've tried, if you haven't learned to maintain action with or without motivation, with or without visible results, then you'll stay stuck in the same cycle. Start, get excited, get distracted, give up. That pattern is broken every morning, not with brute force, but with precise focus. A disciplined mind understands that the true enemy isn't external failure, but internal disconnection. That feeling of living each day as if it were an accident, as if you had no say in how you feel, how you act, or how you respond. But that's false. You do have a choice. You can choose which thoughts to feed, which habits to maintain, which excuses to shut down. But you can't choose if you lack awareness, and awareness only comes when you pause, breathe, and take control of your mind before the world fills it with noise. What are you feeding your mind each morning? What thoughts are looping on repeat before you even leave your bed? Because if you start your day with guilt, with complaints, with comparison, you're digging a trench on your own ground. And the worst part? You don't even notice it. You call it routine. But in truth, it's slow self-destruction. If you don't take control of your first thought, you've already lost half the day, because thought drives emotion. Emotion drives action, and action creates results. If your first thought is, I don't want to get up, today is going to be hard, same as always, then everything that follows will carry that energy. But if your first thought is chosen, not automatic, you take back your power. If you choose to begin your day with direction, the rest of the day has a spine. It won't be perfect, it won't be easy, but it will have structure. And that structure is what holds you up when emotion isn't enough. Take control with something as simple as waking up at the time you promised, not out of obligation, but out of self-respect. Then breathe. Write what you want to achieve, and visualize, even just for 2 minutes, the version of you who has already achieved it. See how they act, how they walk, how they speak to themselves. That version isn't a fantasy, it's a possibility, but you can only reach it if your current self begins making decisions aligned with it. And all of that starts in the morning. That's where the vision is planted, where focus is sharpened, where the tone of your day is set. If you don't master that moment, everything else will master you. But if you conquer it, everything begins to respond, because the world follows those who already lead themselves. And the best training ground for that begins the moment you open your eyes. The most common mistake of those who constantly fail is not that they don't try, it's that they start the day without direction, without a real commitment to themselves. Getting up early means nothing if you do it without purpose. Drinking coffee and sitting in front of a screen is meaningless if there's no intention behind it. You can spend the entire day being busy and still end the day feeling completely empty. Being busy is not the same as being productive. And being productive is not the same as making progress. Real progress only happens when there is clarity, and that clarity is built from the very moment you open your eyes. If you want to stop failing, you don't have to change everything at once. You just need to start your day with intention, with direction, with a plan. A simple one, a powerful one that is repeated so often that your mind recognizes it as an unbreakable command. And if you're here, it's because something inside you is tired of falling into the same patterns, because something deep within knows you're capable of more, that you deserve more, and that you've been delaying it out of fear, out of doubt, or because of a lack of structure. But that can change. Not with words, but with action, with one different morning. One where you look at yourself in the mirror and no longer see the same version. One where even if the world doesn't notice, something inside you feels different. Determination, steadiness, powerful, silence. That feeling of today is the day. Not because everything is perfect, but because this time you will not betray yourself. This time you'll follow through, even if no one sees it. Even if there are no claps, even if it's hard, because you're worth it, because you're no longer willing to live one more day as a copy of the last. And if these words are resonating with you, if something tells you this is the moment, then subscribe now. Not for the channel, not for the videos, but for you, to remind yourself every day that there is a different path, a clearer, stronger, more focused way to live. To remind yourself that there is a place where growth is honored, where discipline matters, where awareness is the standard. You are not alone. There are many of us who decided not to give up, not to delay, not to settle. And every new subscriber here is a symbol, a person who decided to change how they start their day, and with that, how they walk through life. Write in the comments, this time, I follow through with myself. Write it not for me, but for you, so that tomorrow when the alarm goes off, you remember that promise and keep it. Because that simple phrase can become your code, your compass, your anchor. And if you repeat it enough, your mind will believe it. And when your mind believes it, you act. And when you act, you're no longer repeating your story. You're writing a new one, written with the ink of willpower, in letters of character, on pages filled with firm decisions. That's how transformation begins. Not with a miracle, but with a different kind of morning. You're here, now. What very few understand is that each morning is a chance to rewrite yourself. You don't need a new calendar, a new month, or a Monday to begin. Every day you open your eyes is a silent invitation from destiny. Will you live like yesterday, or will you build something new? And that building is not emotional. It doesn't depend on how motivated you feel. It depends on how willing you are to take action, even when you don't feel like it. Because if your commitment to yourself is based on your mood, you're trapped, a prisoner of impulses, hormones, the weather, or your environment. But if your commitment is strong, it doesn't matter how you feel, you do what needs to be done. You move. You organize. You stand firm. Because your word weighs more than your emotion. What separates those who achieve great things from those who always fall short is not intelligence, luck, or connections. It's invisible discipline. The kind no one sees, but that changes everything. The kind that gets you up early when no one makes you. That leads you to plan your day instead of winging it. That makes you read, write, train your mind, set boundaries, breathe before reacting. It's that silent discipline that makes the difference. That hardens you without making you cold. That sharpens your focus without making you rigid. That transforms you. Because you're no longer a slave to your old habits. You become the architect of your identity. But none of that happens unless you turn it into routine, something non-negotiable. You don't need more motivation, you need rituals. Ones that remind you who you are, who you want to become, and what you're willing to do. And those rituals begin at sunrise with a deep breath, with a clear affirmation, with a firm action, with a quiet decision that says, today I will not fail myself. Repeat it every morning. Write it down. Read it, feel it, make it your phrase. Because the man who doesn't fail himself becomes invincible. He may have bad days, moments of doubt, but he doesn't stop. He doesn't fall apart. He doesn't lose himself. Because his direction is stronger than his emotions. And with time, that internal strength begins to show outwardly. His decisions are quicker, his voice steadier, his posture taller, his presence clearer. Because he has built within himself a structure that holds him up. And that structure wasn't given by the world, it was built by him. Each morning, when he chose not to repeat himself again, when he did what he had to do, even when it wasn't easy, when he began to treat himself like a man committed to becoming his best version, that's what set him apart. Not as someone perfect, but as someone solid, not without mistakes, but without excuses. What began as a simple habit eventually became a new way of living. And that quiet but genuine change changes everything. Most people don't fail because they lack dreams. They fail because they haven't learned how to protect their energy. They start the morning with good intentions, but as soon as the day begins to apply pressure, they forget everything. And it's not because they don't want to move forward, it's because they have no strategy to stay focused when the world starts pulling on them. When the notifications begin to ring, when the problems show up, when others demand their time, their attention, their mind, that's when the day slips through their fingers. They don't lose it at 5 p.m. They lose it at 9 a.m. when they allowed external chaos to define their internal direction. That's why if you want to stop failing, you don't just need a plan, you need to fortify your focus, turn it into an unbreakable strength, because in a world that fights for your attention every second, focus is no longer a luxury, it's a survival skill. The morning is the most sacred time of the day because it has not yet been polluted by the urgency of others. It's a pure, clean, quiet space. And if you don't use it, if you don't fill it with purpose, it will be filled with noise. And that noise, though it may seem harmless, pulls you away from your goals. Getting distracted today may feel insignificant, but doing it every day creates a mediocre life, a life full of movement, but no progress, full of activity, but lacking depth. And that's what wears you down. Not effort, but the absence of purpose. Not hard work, but disconnection from your vision. That's why you need to treat every morning like a reprogramming session. Not just symbolically, but practically, strategically. You must train yourself to return to your center, to filter what enters your mind, to choose what you focus on and what you give power to. Create a ritual that anchors you, that forces you to remember who you are before the world tries to tell you. It can be a written affirmation, a powerful question, a conscious breath, or a bold visualization. But do it every single day. No excuses, no breaks, no interruptions, because this doesn't just prepare you, it protects you, it shields you from chaos, from anxiety, from confusion, from that feeling of being alive but without direction. And it doesn't need to last an hour. It only needs to be real, something that connects you to your vision, that reminds you your time matters, that your mind is not for rent, that your energy is not available to just anyone. If you maintain that focus, if you turn it into discipline, then something begins to shift. Distractions lose their grip. Other people's urgencies no longer pull you off center. Your emotions stop controlling you. Because you've decided you're not going to fail from a lack of clarity. You're not going to repeat the same story. You're not going to give away the most precious thing you have, your attention, to what doesn't build you. And that change, though invisible at first, is what makes you unstoppable. Because the one who masters his focus, masters his destiny. The problem isn't failing once. The problem is that when you fail, you create an internal story that justifies continued failure. A silent narrative you repeat each morning without even realizing it. I'm not enough. I always give up. I don't have what it takes. And that voice, which seems like a whisper, becomes an internal command, a mental program that drives your actions, sabotages your decisions, and brings you back to the same place, even when you try to move forward. Because no habit is more destructive than the way you speak to yourself, what you say when you wake up, what you believe about yourself as the day begins. So, if you want to stop failing, you have to change the story. You have to rewrite the way you perceive yourself. You cannot build a new life with a mind that keeps repeating the same old lies. No deep change happens without mental reprogramming. And that reprogramming isn't magic. It's not superficial positive thinking. It's strategic repetition. It's conscious affirmation. It's a daily practice of choosing what kind of man you want to be until that man becomes real. Not through blind faith, but through trained conviction. Every morning, you must speak to yourself as if you already are that version. It doesn't matter if you don't feel it yet. It doesn't matter if your surroundings don't reflect it. You train from within, because if your mind believes it, your body will follow. And if your body takes action, your life will be transformed. That simple, that powerful. It's not about lying to yourself. It's about leading your mind before it drags you back into the same old pattern. Each morning, say it out loud. Today, I act like a disciplined, strong, and determined man, even if it doesn't feel true yet. Because by repeating it, by holding on to it, by moving from that energy, you begin to shift your identity. And identity is the core of everything. You don't act based on what you want. You act based on who you believe you are. And if every day you remind yourself that you're weak, distracted, and inconsistent, you'll keep behaving that way. But if each morning you clearly affirm who you've decided to become even before you feel it, then what today is only a statement, tomorrow will be character. Morning is the perfect moment to install that new narrative, before doubt interrupts you, before the noise contaminates you, when there's still enough silence to hear your own truth. Do it. Write it. Repeat it. If needed, record it, and listen to it daily, because the mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's repeated. It only needs consistency. It only needs direction. And if you don't take the lead, someone else will. The world will try to tell you what to think, how to feel, and what to fear. But if you move first, if you plant your truth before anything else, then everything else loses its power, because you've chosen your story. And a man who chooses his story each morning is already winning, even before he gets out of bed. One of the most silent causes of failure is the lack of emotional closure with the past. Many start the day with their body in the present, but their mind trapped in old mistakes, in choices they didn't make, in chances they missed, in words that hurt them, in moments where they failed and haven't forgiven themselves. And so even if they try to focus, even if they have clear goals, they carry an invisible weight that sabotages their progress. Because no one can build a future if each morning they wake up with yesterday's guilt. That guilt slows you down. It makes you hesitate. It makes you start each day with low energy, with your mind split between what you want to achieve and what you haven't allowed yourself to release. You need to understand this. What you don't close, you repeat. What you don't forgive limits you. What you don't face drags you. That's why a key part of your morning must be to clear the ground. Forgive yourself for what you didn't know how to do. Accept that at that time, you acted with the level of awareness you had. And if today you do something different, it's because you've grown, because you've learned, because you've changed. And that's not weakness, it's maturity. A mature man doesn't live justifying his past, but neither does he stay trapped in it. He honors it. He learns from it. He rises above it. And in doing so, he recovers his energy, his focus, his freedom. Each morning, if you truly want to be powerful, you need to pause, close your eyes, take a deep breath and say, today, I do not punish myself. Today, I use everything I've been to become better. That phrase might sound simple, but when said with intention, with awareness, with an open heart, it cleanses more than 1,000 hours of overthinking, because it gives you back the right to move forward without weight. It reminds you that you are not your mistakes. You are the one who faced them and chose to keep walking with more strength, with more clarity, with more compassion for yourself. Because the man who treats himself with respect each morning begins his day from a place of strength, not from lack. And this isn't about forgetting the past. It's about integrating it, about using it, about saying this happened, but it doesn't define me. This hurt, but it taught me. This failed, but I'm not a failure. That's the narrative you need to install, not because it sounds nice, but because it works. Because that narrative is what makes you move forward, with your chest lifted, your back straight, your eyes steady. And when you sustain that posture each morning, it transforms the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you choose. Because you're no longer running from your past, you're standing on it. And that solid ground, cleansed from guilt and rooted in purpose, gives you a stability the world could never give you. Remember, each new day is a blank page. Don't bring yesterday's stains. Don't begin with old ink. Choose to write something new, something firm, something yours, something worthy. And to do that, the first thing you must let go of is the belief that you have to keep carrying everything. Not today. Today starts differently. Today you choose to move forward. Light, and a man who moves light can go as far as he wants. The biggest mistake men make when they fail again and again is thinking that changing their life means changing everything all at once. They believe they need a radical transformation, a miraculous moment, a breaking point where everything magically aligns. But the truth is different. Real change doesn't begin with extreme decisions. It begins with small, consistent commitments, with actions so simple they seem insignificant, but repeated every day, they become unshakable foundations.